laboratory chimpanzee does not write his own reports.
He doesn't know why the cosmetics make him cry, he just knows that they do.
This is the best analogy I can come up with for my inability to explain why I don't entirely get along with Volvo's Sensus connectivity and entertainment technology, basically the huge 9-inch portrait format touchscreen in the middle of the dash.
I can make a few specific allegations. It has crashed and rebooted a few times while driving, the pinch-to-zoom function can be frustratingly slow and the map can lack detail, with street or place names too often absent and minor roads disappearing too soon. But there's also something about the nature or timing of the sat-nav instructions which I can't explain but which I know often leaves me confused and occasionally on the wrong road.
Doubtless some human-machine interface expert could identify the fault, and it probably lies with the human.
My occasional struggles with Sensus shouldn't deter you from buying a V90, which remains one of the best long-term test cars I've run.
But take a proper test drive and be sure you can get along with it.
The nature of modern daily driving means these systems have at least as much influence as the oily bits on how we view our cars. My advance into middle age has moved from crisis to acceptance.
A friend of similar vintage recently rode down to see me for lunch on his Triumph Street Scrambler, wildly different but equally stereotypically middle-aged.
Engaging dynamic mode gives the Volvo's chassis an athleticism my own will now forever lack.
For a mile or two I'm at 20-something once again, until one of the kids in the back threatens to puke.
Of course Volvo is to be lauded for its announcement that every new model launched from 2019 will be electrified to some extent.
But perhaps like a few other Volvo owners, I walked out to my V90 on the morning I read the news and felt like my clean, sophisticated but conventional diesel had been subtly disowned by its maker.
It seems diesel's days are done, despite the case that can be made to the contrary.
Government ministers caution us not to buy them, knowing that punitive taxes and an eventual ban are on the way.
I recently bought a nearly new car of another make from a main dealer, and the salesman's desperation to convince me that one of his in-stock diesels would be best for the use the car will be put to, it really wouldn't, give him away.
Sales of new cars are down, but sales of diesels more so.
So I thought I'd make a road trip ideally suited to a diesel, and which you'd still think twice about in a fully electric car, from the Sussex coast to Belfast, diagonally across much of the UK.
It's a round trip of 1,010 miles, almost all of it on motorway with the Volvo ticking over in eighth and returning a best ever 508 miles and 41.8 miles per gallon from a single tank.
I made a similar trip in harsher circumstances across Sweden in a petrol V90 for a story in the April issue, and my diesel was even less stressed. A Volvo's ability to compress long journeys is extraordinary.
I filled up near Brighton, listened to 5 or 6 albums, ate on the boat and filled up again in Belfast.
The petrol would have needed an extra stop.
A purpose of the trip was to compete in the Gran Fondo Northern Ireland, a 110-mile bike race, or meander, in my case, starting in Belfast and heading south over the Mourne Mountains to the border with the Republic, and back again.
I am aware of the absurdity of driving 1,100 miles to cycle 10% of that. The Volvo's boot wasn't troubled by the presence of a 7 kg racing bike, which it of course swallows whole, nor the associated tools and lycra.
Instead, the car proved its worth afterwards.
The ride itself was fast, gloriously scenic, mostly dry, and I surprised myself with a top third finish.
But celebrations at the finish line were curtailed by torrential rain, high wind and plummeting temperatures.
My 5-mile ride back to the hotel with tired and stone-cold muscles was probably the most miserable I've had.
By the time I reached the car in the hotel car park, my hands had ceased to function.
So I threw the bike in the back, sat in the front passenger seat and let the fierce seat heaters reanimate me while I consumed every calorie in the cabin.
It's a nice hotel, but the Volvo was a better place to recover.
And more impressively, despite driving home 2 days later, just when the aching is always at its worst, it delivered me feeling like I could do it all again.